It is an enormous pleasure to be here tonight. I remember the times when we were working back in 83, 84, careless of any place in history, not realizing we were writing history, not completely looking after the material that we produced. But actually, I'd like to go back a little bit before that to how I became involved in the very first place. From 79 to 82, I was out of the country for quite a lot of time. In fact, I don't know whether the Institute would be interested in my own archive, but I ended up as a pin-up in the gay magazine for Rio de Janeiro in 1979, dressed in a Father Christmas hat, wearing the briefest of swimming costumes with a sort of stuffed reindeer, saying, "Why don't you give an exotic present for Christmas?" I was absolutely thrilled to be in a place where I, pale-skinned, was thought to be exotic. After that, I worked in Spain for a while. So I came back to this country in 82. I knew practically nothing about AIDS because it really hadn't penetrated either Rio or the Canary Islands, where I'd been living at that time. I worked as a volunteer at London Lesbian and Gay Switchboard, and that's when I really heard about HIV. But what moved me to become involved, and I've told this story many times, and I'm sorry if it embarrasses you, Martin, but was hearing the first-hand account from Martin and Rupert, who have been both Terry Higgins' dearest friend and Terry Higgins' partner. I heard that account at the Conway Hall in early 83, I forget the exact date, at a conference that had been organised by Switchboard and the Health Education Council. And because of that, I stood up at the end of the meeting and said, look, these people, meaning Switchboard, were inundated with calls then because there had been, I think, a television programme. The news was beginning to get out about what was happening, and Terry had died just a year before. And I said, these people really need help. Please, anybody in this room who has something to offer, let's join and do the work that needs to be done. And from that, I went to a flat somewhere in the East End, and I met Terry's close friends, and we basically, that's where the renamed, and God knows why we felt the need to rename it from Terry Higgins Trust to Terrence Higgins. Some idea that it sounded slightly more authoritative, which is absolute nonsense. That's where the Terrence Higgins Trust, as it is now, started. First of all, we moved from the flat in the East End, the flat I was in Marylebone, and then our first offices, which I think were in Mount Pleasant. Nick and Janet did such amazing work. Now, my particular interest, because I studied biology and psychology, my particular interest was health education, which is how come I was involved in producing some of those posters. And the hilarious times I spent with good friends going through the leaflets about the sexual practices and other practices which might pass on the virus. So we were going through a whole list of water sports, yep, definitely could do, yeah, the medical, we had to listen to what the medical group said. And none of the other things like, well, do you think people really do that? Is that very common? I think quite a few good ideas came out. But they were so important to be able to talk to people about the practices as we knew them then, which was injecting drug use and penetrative sexual activities, or anything where blood might be involved. It was so important to write those in the way that reached the communities that needed to know. And that's always, I think, been such an important part of Terrence Higgins' work. To write, to produce material for the community. I'm glad and proud that with the Trust we sat on some very important committees, and I'm sure they still do. It was actually talking to the people in the pubs and the clubs where I think the greatest work was done. And also where we had some, it sounds strange to say that there was an awful lot of laughs. I mean, I remember people like Jim Wilson so fondly. And the humour in the face of what was happening is something I shall always treasure. And the things we did to get our message across and to raise money, it wasn't just rattling buckets. Somewhere, something else the archive might want is a picture of me in Janet Reagan negligee set on the stage, ripping the trousers off an American porn star. It's a picture. And I think it's that determined spirit which I hope comes across in many of these posters, which are informative, which are very human, very warm, very sexy. I'm very proud that we played such an important part, and I hope very much that I know there are people, like I met at Gay Pride at the weekend, who say, it was those trust posters which told me about HIV. It was those trust posters who helped me as a person just coming out, just coming to understand their sexuality, to develop ways of relating to people, of having physical contact with people, of having sex with people, to be safe and not to be afraid. And that I managed to play a part in that and work with such wonderful people. I am very, very proud and very happy to have been there. So thank you.